A small explosion echoed through the night sky. The cabin shook violently. "Are there any F-22 pilots on board?" The captain's voice rang out desperately over the intercom. In seat 14B, a woman jolted awake, eyes wide with panic but resolute. She grabbed the emergency communication unit, her voice trembling yet decisive. "I designed Falcon 0. Give me access." Her fingers flew across the keys. The cockpit lights blazed to life. A strange signal appeared on NATO radar screens. "Falcon 0 active." Colonel Ryan Keller, commanding the watch, stared at the frequency in disbelief. His voice came out hoarse and broken. "That's impossible. That's my wife." From the radio, her voice rang clear. "This time, I won't let anyone fall." Catherine Miles was 33 years old, a brilliant aerospace engineer who 7 years earlier had been responsible for the Falcon 0 emergency protocol system for NATO F-22 fighters. She had been 4 months pregnant, married to Colonel Ryan Keller, commander of the Flight Engineering Squadron. They had discussed nursery colors, playfully argued over baby names, and built a life together. On the day of the system trial, Catherine had asked permission to step outside briefly. "Stomach cramps," she said, "nothing serious, just pregnancy discomfort." An explosion shattered the testing facility. The lab erupted in flames. 8 pilots and 3 engineers died instantly, trapped in a room designed to withstand missile strikes but vulnerable to sabotage from within. Catherine's name appeared on the casualty list. No one knew she had left the room minutes earlier. No one saw her collapse in the hallway when she heard the blast, clutching her stomach, knowing something terrible had happened. The news spread like wildfire through the base. Ryan broke down completely. Catherine lost the baby due to the shock and trauma, her body giving up what her heart could not protect. The guilt crushed her. She had left the room. She had survived while others had not. And worse, she suspected the explosion was no accident. But proving it would mean admitting she had abandoned her post. The military press called it the Falcon disaster. The entire program was permanently suspended. Millions of dollars and years of research were abandoned. Catherine vanished. She could not face Ryan, could not face the families of the dead, could not face herself in the mirror. Official NATO records listed her as confirmed deceased, a clerical error no one bothered to correct because no one was looking. 7 years passed. She lived anonymously in Hamburg, working as a maintenance technician for civilian aircraft systems. Low-level work, invisible work, the kind where no one asked about your past or credentials. On her wrist, she still wore a silver bracelet engraved with the code FZ0E1, the original Falcon 0 identifier. She touched it sometimes when she thought no one was watching, a habit she could not break. A coworker once asked her, "Why don't you fly anymore? You clearly know aircraft better than anyone here." She answered softly, "Because the sky doesn't need me." What she did not say was that she did not deserve the sky, that every time she looked up, she saw the faces of the people she had failed to save. On her desk, hidden in a drawer, she kept a photograph with burned edges, rescued from the facility wreckage. Ryan holding her, his hand on her pregnant belly, both smiling, taken the morning before the test. She looked at it sometimes late at night when the apartment was too quiet, then folded it away, trying to bury the past where it could not hurt anyone else. Her life had become small and manageable. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. No dreams, no hopes, no future. Just existence, carefully controlled so she would never again be responsible for anyone's life. She told herself it was enough. That penance required sacrifice. That living in shadows was fitting for someone who had walked away from the light. But every night she dreamed of the explosion, and every morning she woke reaching for a child who had never drawn breath. The bracelet on her wrist grew tarnished over the years. She never polished it. The decay felt right, like visible proof of how far she had fallen, from the genius engineer Catherine Miles, who designed systems to save pilots' lives, to someone who spent her days replacing worn gaskets and calibrating basic instruments. Work a high school graduate could do. It was what she deserved, what she had chosen, what she wore like armor against ever mattering again. Until Flight 381. Until the moment everything she had been running from caught up with her at 30,000 feet. Until the sky called her back and gave her one impossible chance at redemption. The photograph stayed in the drawer. That morning, as she left for the airport, she almost threw it away, one final severing of the past. But something stopped her, an instinct she could not name. So she left it there, hidden but not destroyed, a tiny ember of the person she used to be, refusing to fully extinguish. And that ember was about to become a fire. Catherine boarded the commercial flight from Berlin to Ottawa with minimal luggage and maximum anxiety. She hated flying as a passenger, hated surrendering control, hated trusting systems she could not personally verify. But the contract was important, a civilian radar maintenance project, decent pay, 3 months of steady work. She needed the money. More importantly, she needed the distraction. Seat 14B, window side. She always chose window seats, a remnant of her old life when she loved watching the mechanics of flight. Now she just kept the shade down and tried to sleep. The flight took off smoothly. Catherine took a sleeping pill, something she had relied on too much lately. Within an hour, she was unconscious, head against the cold plastic wall. She dreamed of the explosion. She always dreamed of the explosion. The jolt woke her, not violent, but wrong. The kind of wrong that 7 years of aerospace engineering screamed about, even through a drugged haze. Lights flickered. Cabin pressure shifted slightly. Passengers murmured nervously, not yet panicking, but aware something was off. Then the captain's voice, trying for calm but failing. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a navigation system failure. If there are any military pilots or aviation technicians on board, please identify yourselves to the flight crew immediately." Catherine's heart stopped. Around her, passengers looked at each other with growing fear. The plane banked sharply, correcting course manually. Someone's drink spilled. A child started crying. "This is your captain. I repeat, are there any F-22 pilots or military technicians on board? We need your assistance immediately." The specific call out for F-22 hit Catherine like a physical blow. This was not random equipment failure. This was a NATO-specific systems cascade, the exact kind Falcon 0 had been designed to prevent. She sat frozen, memories flooding back. The lab, the explosion, the guilt, 7 years of hiding. The plane shuddered again, harder this time. Emergency oxygen masks dropped. Real panic spread through the cabin now. Passengers grabbed masks, parents shielded children. Catherine looked at the emergency control panel on the bulkhead, the one passengers never noticed. She saw the specific error code flashing on the small diagnostic screen. A code she had written. Part of a system she had designed. Her system was calling to her after 7 years. She stood, legs shaking, and moved toward the cockpit. A flight attendant tried to stop her. "I'm a systems engineer. I need to speak to the captain." "Ma'am, please return to your seat. I designed the emergency protocol. This plane is trying to access it. Either let me through, or we're all dying tonight." Something in her voice, an authority she thought long dead, made the attendant step aside. The cockpit was chaos. 2 pilots fought with unresponsive controls. The co-pilot was manually calculating position. Both men's faces were slick with sweat. "Who are you?" the captain demanded. "Catherine Miles, aerospace engineer. I designed the Falcon 0 emergency protocol for NATO aircraft. Your plane is trying to access that system, which means your navigation failure isn't random, it's catastrophic and cascading. We're not a military aircraft. You're using NATO-compatible systems for transatlantic flight. It's standard. And something just triggered a failsafe I built 7 years ago. Let me access your systems, or I can't help." The co-pilot pulled up her seat record. "She's listed as a maintenance technician." "That's what I am now," Catherine interrupted. "I used to be a lot more. And we have maybe 10 minutes before you lose all control surfaces. Your choice." The captain looked at her, at the failing systems, at the dark ocean below. "Do it." Catherine slid into the jump seat, pulled up the diagnostic interface, and entered a code she hadn't typed in 7 years, FZ01 override. The system hesitated, then responded, "Falcon 0 emergency protocol activated." Awaiting verification. Catherine's fingers flew across the keyboard. Muscle memory took over. She accessed the navigation backup, the one hidden in civilian aircraft for exactly this scenario. The one almost no one knew existed. In the NATO Command Center in Brussels, alarms blared. Colonel Ryan Keller was ending his shift, exhausted from a 14-hour day, when the screens lit up. "Sir, we have an unauthorized Falcon 0 activation." "That's impossible. That code was deleted 7 years ago." "It's active." Commercial Flight 381, currently over the North Atlantic. Someone on board has command-level access. Ryan crossed to the screen, staring at the data. Then his legs nearly gave out. Pull the pilot identification. There's no pilot ID, sir. It's tagged as civilian override, manual entry, original architect codes. Pull it anyway. The technician typed rapidly. A name appeared, Catherine Miles. Ryan's vision blurred. His hands gripped the console to stay upright. That's not possible. She's dead, sir. He grabbed the comm unit, hand shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Patch me through now. Static, then a woman's voice, professional but strained. NATO Command, this is Flight 381 requesting emergency navigation assistance and airspace clearance. We have full engine function but compromised navigation. I'm using Falcon 0 for manual coordination. Ryan's voice barely rose above a whisper, Catherine. A pause. A sharp intake of breath. Ryan. For a moment, neither could speak. 7 years collapsed into silence. Finally, Catherine's voice, thick with tears as she fought them back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't face you after. Guide the plane. Ryan cut her off, switching to command mode because he could not handle emotion right now or he would shatter. Full airspace clearance granted. I'm scrambling F-22s for escort. They'll guide you to Keflavik for emergency landing. Copy that, Catherine. Yes. After we talk. After I know. On the radar, 4 F-22 fighters launched from Iceland, screaming toward the coordinates. In the cockpit of Flight 381, Catherine worked with steady hands and a breaking heart, using skills she had sworn never to use again. And somewhere over the dark Atlantic, a woman dead for 7 years began. The long journey back to life. Catherine worked with clinical precision, talking the captain through manual navigation corrections while coordinating with NATO Command. Reduce altitude to 28,000 feet, heading 290, maintain current speed. Confirmed, the captain replied, hands steadier now that someone seemed to know what they were doing. On the radar screen, Catherine watched the 4 F-22s approach, her planes, her system, her legacy she had thought reduced to ash. Through her headset, Ryan's voice guided the fighters. Falcon 1 through 4, you are cleared to escort civilian Flight 381. This is a Falcon 0 emergency protocol activation, treated as military priority. The fighter pilots, trained to respond to this code without question, acknowledged. They had never actually used Falcon 0 in real operations, it had been theoretical, a system that existed but was never activated. Until tonight. As the F-22s took position around the commercial aircraft, passengers looked out windows in amazement. Fighter escort, military precision, lights in the darkness. Catherine allowed herself one moment to look. Her systems working as designed, protecting people the way she had intended, the way she had failed to do 7 years ago. Flight 381, this is Falcon Leader. We have you visual. Beautiful flying for a civilian bird. Catherine keyed the mic. Falcon Leader, this is Catherine Miles. I designed the protocol you're executing. Thanks for showing up. A pause from the fighter pilot, then with new respect, ma'am, it's an honor. We've studied your work. She almost laughed. They had studied her work in training simulators, never knowing the architect was officially dead. Ryan's voice returned on the command channel. Catherine, we're picking up anomalies in the Flight 381 system logs. Something triggered this failure deliberately. I know. It's a cascade pattern. Someone removed a critical component before takeoff, probably sold it on the black market. The system tried to compensate, failed, and triggered Falcon 0 as last resort. Can you confirm the component? Catherine pulled up deep diagnostic files, her access level opening doors that should not exist on civilian aircraft. Back doors she had built for exactly this scenario. What she found made her blood run cold. Ryan, I'm sending you a data package. It's 7 years old, from the day of the explosion. What? Falcon 0 automatically backs up all system events. I built that in. The data from our lab test has been sitting in the protocol's core memory all this time. Catherine, what are you saying? I'm saying the explosion wasn't an accident. Someone removed a critical voltage regulator, the same type that failed on this plane. And the system logged who had access to that room in the hour before the test. She hit send. Encrypted data, compressed and timestamped, flowed from the civilian aircraft to NATO Command in Brussels. Ryan watched the file unpack. Security footage, access logs, maintenance records, all automatically preserved by a system designed to protect lives by documenting truth. One name appeared repeatedly: Senior Officer Marcus Venn, NATO Logistics Coordinator, the man responsible for equipment procurement and maintenance oversight. The man who had been selling military components to arms dealers for profit. My God, Ryan breathed. He killed 11 people to cover up theft. 12, Catherine said quietly. I lost our baby from the stress. Silence on the channel. When Ryan's voice returned, it was thick with rage and grief. Catherine, why didn't you come forward? Because I wasn't in the room when it exploded. I had left. I survived because I abandoned my post. Who would believe me, the only survivor claiming sabotage? They would have said I was covering my own negligence. You were pregnant and in pain. You didn't abandon anything. I told myself that for 7 years. Never believed it. Catherine, I'm transmitting this data to all NATO command channels. Let's make sure everyone sees it. She routed the data through Falcon 0's emergency broadcast system. Within seconds, every NATO base with appropriate clearance received the archived evidence. Marcus Venn was in a meeting when military police entered. He looked confused, then panicked as they placed him under arrest. What is this? Sabotage, theft of military equipment, involuntary manslaughter of 11 NATO personnel. Want me to keep going? The news spread instantly through military channels. The Falcon disaster was no accident. Evidence surfaces after 7 years. Original engineer alive and responsible for revelation. Media called it the resurrection of Falcon 0. On Flight 381, Catherine guided the plane through its approach to Keflavik. The F-22s held formation, an honor guard for a woman who had just proven her innocence from 30,000 feet. Flight 381, you are cleared for final approach. Emergency services standing by. The captain looked at Catherine with something close to awe. You saved all of us. And cleared your name at the same time. I finally did my job. 7 years late. Better late than never. The plane touched down smoothly. Reverse thrusters engaged, brakes held. Scattered applause from the cabin, passengers realizing they had survived something catastrophic. As they taxied to the gate, Catherine saw them. Military vehicles, official NATO cars, press vans with satellite equipment. Ma'am, the flight attendant said softly, there are a lot of people waiting for you. I know. Are you ready? Catherine touched the bracelet on her wrist, the FZ01 code that had defined her life. I've been ready for 7 years. The plane stopped. The door opened. Catherine stepped into the jet bridge and saw Ryan at the end, in full dress uniform, flanked by senior officers. They stared at each other across the distance. 7 years of grief, guilt, loss, and love compressed into a single moment. She walked toward him, each step feeling like miles. Her hands shook, her eyes blurred with tears. He met her halfway, and when they collided, it was like coming home to a place that had been burned down and rebuilt from memory. You kept your promise, Ryan said, his face buried in her hair. You didn't let anyone fall. I should have come back sooner. You came back when you could. That's enough. Behind them, the F-22s flew overhead in formation, a missing man formation honoring those lost 7 years ago. Catherine watched them pass, tears streaming down her face. For them. It was always for them. I know. A general approached, metal case in hand. Miss Miles, on behalf of NATO Command, we owe you more than thanks. You owe me nothing. I was just doing what should have been done 7 years ago. You exposed corruption, saved a plane full of civilians, and proved that truth does not expire. We're reinstating your security clearance, offering full back pay, and recommending you for the Order of Merit. Catherine looked at the medal, then at Ryan. I don't want medals. I want to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Then help us rebuild what was lost. Come back, not as a ghost, but as yourself. She touched Ryan's hand. I don't know if I remember who that is anymore. We'll figure it out, Ryan said. Together. And for the first time in 7 years, Catherine believed him. 3 months after Flight 381, Catherine stood in the NATO Command Center, no longer a ghost, but a consultant with full clearance. The Falcon 0 protocol had been reactivated, enhanced with her 7 years of reflection on what could have been better. It was now standard on all military and compatible civilian aircraft. Marcus Venn had been sentenced to 25 years in military prison. His corruption network, spanning 5 countries, had been dismantled. Dozens of stolen components recovered. The families of those lost in the original explosion received official apologies and the truth they deserved. One widow, married to one of the engineers who died, sought Catherine out. "I blamed you. The news said you were responsible. I hated you. I blamed myself too. I'm sorry. You lost just as much as we did. Maybe more, because you've been carrying the guilt we put on you." They cried together, 2 women bound by tragedy and finally freed by truth. The ceremony was held at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Full-dress uniforms, international press, diplomats from member nations. Catherine wore a simple black dress, no military insignia, because she had never formally served. But Ryan stood beside her in full colonel's dress, medals glinting in the lights. The Secretary General spoke first. "Engineering excellence changes warfare, but integrity changes history." Catherine Miles represents both. They presented her with the Order of Merit, NATO's highest civilian honor. For extraordinary bravery in the face of personal tragedy, the citation read, "maintaining the highest standards of truth and saving countless lives through both her original work and her courage in revealing corruption." Catherine accepted it, feeling its weight, not just the medal, but what it represented: validation, vindication, recognition that she had never been the villain in the story. "Thank you," she said simply. "But the real heroes are the pilots who fly every day, trusting systems built by people like me. I just wanted to be worthy of that trust again." After the ceremony, she donated the medal to the NATO Aerospace Museum. "Put it with the others. I don't need to keep it. I know what I did." The museum created an exhibit, "The Falcon Zero Protocol, Engineering is Life-Saving." It featured the original designs, the disaster, the cover-up, and the dramatic resurrection. Central to the display was Catherine's silver bracelet, the FZ-01 code worn for 7 years in exile. The placard read, "She never stopped protecting the sky." Social media exploded with her story, the engineer who rose from the dead to save Flight 381 and expose military corruption. Within a week, it had gone global. Comments flooded in. She carried guilt that wasn't hers for 7 years. This is what real strength looks like. The military tried to bury the truth. She dug it up at 30,000 feet. Anyone else crying reading this? Catherine did not read the comments. She had learned that external validation, whether praise or blame, was not what mattered. What mattered was knowing she had finally done right by the people who died. Ryan found her on the museum's observation deck, watching planes take off from the nearby base. "Thinking about flying again? No, I'm done with it all. But I like watching others do it safely. Catherine, I need to ask you something." She turned to face him, seeing the hesitation in his eyes. 7 years ago, we were planning a life together. Then everything exploded, literally and figuratively. I thought you were dead, mourned, eventually tried to move on. Ryan, let me finish. These past 3 months, working with you again, it's been like finding a part of myself I thought was gone forever. But I don't know if we can rebuild what we had. Too much has changed. She took his hand. "We can't rebuild it. That version of us died in the explosion. But maybe we can build something new, 2 different people who understand loss and truth." "I'd like that." "So would I." They stood together as the sun set, 2 people who had survived tragedy separately, now facing an uncertain future together. The next day, Catherine started teaching, not at a military academy, but at a civilian engineering university, Crisis Systems Design, When Failure Costs Lives. Her first lecture began simply, "I'm going to tell you about the worst day of my life and how it taught me that systems alone can't save people. Truth can." The students listened, captivated, as she walked them through the disaster, the cover-up, the exile, and the redemption. "Engineering is about solving problems," she concluded. "But before you can solve problems, you have to admit they exist. That takes courage." One student raised a hand. "Professor, do you regret the 7 years you lost?" Catherine considered carefully. "I regret the circumstances, but those years taught me humility. Taught me that systems are only as good as the people operating them. So no, I don't regret learning that lesson. I just wish it hadn't cost so much." After class, she walked through campus, anonymous among the students. No one recognized her as the woman from the news. That was fine. She had spent 7 years being invisible. She could handle a little more anonymity. What she could no longer handle was silence. And she would never be silent again. 1 year after Flight 381, Catherine stood on a runway at dawn, watching F-22s prepare for training exercises. She was now NATO's chief advisor for emergency systems, a position created specifically for her. Not flying, not in the cockpit, but ensuring every system worked as it should. Ryan joined her, coffee in both hands. They're using the updated Falcon 0 in today's exercise. Want to watch? Always. The fighters took off in perfect formation, afterburners lighting up the morning sky. Catherine tracked them on her tablet, watching the data streams, everything functioning correctly. A young engineering student approached nervously. "Professor Miles, I'm interning here this summer. Can I ask you something?" "Of course. When you were in hiding, did you ever think about the sky? Did you miss it?" Catherine smiled. "Every single day. But I convinced myself the sky was better off without me. That I had caused enough damage." "What changed your mind?" "I didn't change my mind. The sky did. It called me back when I was needed. And I finally understood that running from guilt doesn't fix anything. Facing it does." The intern nodded, processing this. "We study your work in school. The Falcon 0 protocol is in every aerospace engineering textbook now. That's not my legacy. What is? The truth. The refusal to let corruption win. That matters more than any system I designed." Ryan put his arm around her shoulders. "You're being modest. I'm being honest. Systems fail. Truth endures." Later that day, in her office, Catherine opened the old photograph. Ryan holding her when she was pregnant, both smiling, unaware of what was coming. She no longer cried when she looked at it. The grief had softened into something she could carry without breaking. She placed it framed on her desk, no longer hidden. The past was part of her, but it no longer defined her. A text from Ryan: "Dinner tonight. Our place." They had moved in together 6 months ago, a new apartment with no ghosts, just possibility. She typed back, "Our place." Yes. That evening, as they cooked together in comfortable silence, Catherine thought about the journey from catastrophe to exile to redemption. "Do you think the people who died would approve of what I'm doing now?" she asked Ryan quietly. "I think they'd be proud that you didn't give up. That you came back when it mattered. I gave up for 7 years. No, you retreated. That's different. Sometimes we need to step back before we can move forward." She stirred the sauce, considering, "I still dream about the explosions sometimes." "I know. So do I. But it's different now. In the dreams, I save them. Not in reality, but in my mind, I get there in time." That's healing. Or delusion. Does it matter if it lets you sleep? If it lets you function? If it lets you live instead of just survive? She smiled. "When did you become so wise?" "Somewhere between losing you and finding you again." They ate dinner watching the news. A story came on about a commercial flight nearly crashing but saved by emergency protocols. Falcon 0 activation saved 97 lives today, the anchor reported. The system designed by aerospace engineer Catherine Miles, whose own story of redemption has inspired millions. Catherine muted the TV. "I don't need the credit. I know. But you deserve it. What I deserve is to sleep without nightmares. Everything else is extra." That night, she did sleep peacefully. No explosions, no guilt, no running. Just rest. Real rest, the kind that comes when you have finally forgiven yourself.